Friends, family, and colleagues of Dr. Leibo, thank you for giving me the opportunity to pay tribute to Dr. Leibo today. I'm very honored to be part of a memorial service for such a great man. I've thought about what I will say over these past weeks, and in true Leibo fashion, I've waited until just this morning to sit down and put my tribute together. Some people do their best work when they have a lot of time to mull things over, write and rewrite multiple drafts over weeks of time. Others of us work best under pressure with a deadline looming as we pull through the all-nighter. It was one of my first impressions of Dr. Leibo that he was a master procrastinator. I remember my first time out to Acres. It was a day on which Dr. Leibo had a grant due. I remember the office was buzzing with administrative staff and students helping him put documents together that had to be postmarked by the end of the day. He made the deadline, and that wasn't the only time that I saw that scenario play out. So now, when I find myself working up to the last minute on a deadline, like now, I often think that in some way he passed this trait on to me, and it makes me smile. I was a PhD student of Dr. Leibo's from 2001 to 2007. I came to him fresh out of undergrad with absolutely no experience in a lab or with experimental design. I was not a scientist. I had never frozen anything except for ice in my freezer at home. I had big ideas and little experience to back it up, but that didn't deter Dr. Leibo from taking me on. He started by giving me a stack of papers to read, and he put me at the bench with his postdoc. He would regularly meet with me and in his office where we would talk about cryobiology, and in those meetings I often learned more than I would in a full week of class. He had so much knowledge, and he was so eager to share it. One of the things that always amazed me about him was his ability to recall the date and authors of nearly every paper he had ever read on command. It was truly impressive. His enthusiasm was contagious, and I often left his office reinvigorated to plan the next experiment or to research a new question that had come up during the meeting. The only time I ever hesitated to go to his office was after he had reviewed something I had written. His pedantic nature for English grammar was something he kind of wore as a badge of honor, and the bleeding papers I would get back from him often made me question whether or not I was truly a native English speaker. Yet, even in those times, his gentle nature always left me with the desire to want to do better next time, rather than feeling embarrassed or ashamed for the many, many mistakes that I would make. Some of my fondest memories of Dr. Leibo involve a glass of wine or an Asian-inspired meal and stories. If there was one thing Dr. Leibo did well other than science, it was tell a story. I always enjoyed hearing his stories, even when I'd heard them before. I think it was the excitement in his voice and his hearty chuckle that would draw me in. Dr. Leibo supported me in a somewhat untraditional doctoral degree. He even traveled to Germany to visit with me during my time doing research there. I will never forget sitting outside on a cobblestone square in Germany after a long day of work with him in the lab, having a glass of wine and talking about science and traveling. I learned a lot of things from him during those talks, and not just about science. He taught me how to enjoy the journey and to take advantage of all the places that science would take me. While many of his stories would start out about some research he was doing or a lab he was visiting, they would almost always end up being about these interesting people he had met, the amazing places he had visited, or some adventure he had had outside of the lab. As scientists and professors, we work a lot. But from my perspective, it was never a job for Dr. Leibo. He lived it and he loved it, and it was truly inspiring. I will never forget so many things about Dr. Leibo, many things that I'm sure others here today have probably already mentioned. His incredible kindness, his gentle nature, his patience and dedication as a teacher in and out of the classroom. I will never forget the times that he and Betty opened their home to me for dinners and holidays. They were always so warm and so welcoming. It is surely appropriate to honor him for the great teacher and scientist that he was, and his enormous contributions to the fields of cryobiology, conservation, and even human infertility. But what I hope others will remember is his love for science, the way he inspired students by example in and out of the classroom, and the genuine and honest way he treated those of us who were so fortunate to have crossed his path. To say that I will miss him isn't enough, but I guess we often can't think of words that hold the power to convey our true emotions when we lose someone so special. So I will hold my memories of him close to my heart and strive to do work every day that would make him proud, including writing grammatically correct papers. So, cheers to you, Dr. Leibo. I hope you and Betty are having one grand adventure somewhere.